Hey, good morning, YouTubes. It is Thursday, March 15th, 2018. I'm sitting here in the parking lot of the VA hospital here in Louisville. I just have some tests to do. No biggie. A yearly test I have to do every year. But I guess what I want to talk about today, this isn't political and it's not really social, it's more faith-centered. So, and I had mentioned I was going to cover some faith topics. So today's topic is a topic of faith. And I want to talk about God's will. And there's two Old Testament stories that apply here. And so the first story is the story of Abraham and Isaac. And so God commands Abraham to take Isaac up on the mountain and sacrifice him to God. Now, this is the son that God had promised Abraham. And Abraham was obedient to God and took Isaac and was just about to sacrifice him when God stopped his hand and provided a new sacrifice. But he was obedient. He was prepared and faithful and trusted in God. And the second story I want to talk about is the story of Jonah. And so Jonah, I realize that these are all children's Bible stories, but Jonah, God told Jonah to go to Nineveh, and he didn't want to go. He was disobedient. And he fled, and there was a storm, and he was swallowed by a whale. And when he relented and agreed, he was released, and he went on to Nineveh to do what God had asked him to do. And so there's a reason I bring all this up. So for a while now, pretty much this whole month, I've been spending a lot of time thinking and contemplating on God's will in my life. And there's a reason why, but I'm not really going to get into it. As the person who would know, they'll know if they're watching this. So anyway, that's the catalyst to get me to contemplate on God's will and try to focus on God's will in my life. And so last night I went to bed probably maybe 2:30 in the morning maybe. Well, I woke up at 4 o'clock. That seems to be pretty standard for me, a couple hours of sleep. So, now, because of this test today, I can't eat anything, so I haven't eaten anything today. Can only really drink water. And when I got up, I didn't turn the television on. I didn't do anything. I just went and sat down in my chair, and it's like as soon as I sat down, I just picked right up where I left off, contemplating the will of God. Not just God's will in my life, but God's will as a theological construct as well. So God's will, well, let me back up here. So a lot of people confuse fate with destiny, right? The concepts of fate and destiny. They're not the same thing. Fate is, it doesn't matter what choices you make or where you go, you will always arrive at your fated whatever it is, right? That's the concept of fate. The concept of destiny is there is something you are meant to do. You can embrace your destiny and pursue it, or you can reject it and go a different way. And God's will in our lives is like destiny. Oftentimes, that still small voice we either ignore or fail to hear altogether. But when we do hear it, it isn't always what we want to hear. In fact, if it is always something you want to hear, it's probably not the still small voice of God. So, as I was sitting there thinking, I began to pray. And God spoke to my heart, and this is it's not something I want to do. And I'm going to continue to pray to discern that was in fact God, right? I do believe it was. But I'm going to continue to pray and continue to pray for guidance. But this is not something I wanted, or that I want to do, or I really would ever want for my life. But here's the thing. When you are obedient to God's will, when God speaks to your heart and you're obedient to God, even when it's something that you don't want to do, once you submit to the will of God, there is a peace that comes with that. I can personally attest to this. There is a peace that will come to you. I want to be obedient to God. I don't know that I want to or can do this. So if you're watching this and you're a man and man or a woman of faith, I said man and a woman. That's not possible, right? If you're a man or a woman of faith, please pray for me. Right? Life can be, is difficult. In whichever direction we go. But I will leave with this. As difficult as life is, as much of a struggle life can be, you let God take your burden, and He will give you His. God's burden, His yoke is easy and His burden is light. There's a peace that comes by following Christ. There's a peace that comes with being obedient to God. And, in the last few months, my faith has been quickened. I've focused more on my faith, and it has made a difference in my life. It absolutely has. If you're struggling with life, give it to God. Let God pick you up. It gets better. I hope everybody has a good morning. God bless.